All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We're talking Las Vegas Raiders. We're going to start it off once again with Brock Bowers talk. And it's, like over a week since the NFL draft is officially concluded. And Brock Bowers at pick number 13. We go back 1 or 2 months ago, and Brock Bowers was undisputedly a top 5 potential talent in the NFL draft class. And he fell all the way to pick number 13. His draft stock kind of fell in general because quarterbacks were flying up the draft boards all off season. And so I understand, like, Brock Bowers, over a week after the draft, he's still getting critiqued. The Raiders are still getting critiqued for selecting him at pick number 13. And it's going to be a long off season. You're going to be hearing this for months on months and months. And I understand it from a different standpoint. I understand it from an outsider standpoint where it's like, all right, they needed a tackle. They needed somebody on the offensive line. Maybe they needed a cornerback. Maybe they were going to go with Michael Penix Jr. or a quarterback at pick 13. But they went with the best player available, and that was clearly by far Brock Bowers. And so I just saw a headline earlier today. It was from an NFL executive. They always love to be anonymous. They never say who they are or who the executive of the team they are is. And here's what he had to say. I don't like the Raiders using a luxury pick on Brock Bowers in the 2024 draft. Here's the exact quote. I think they were stuck once Atlanta took Michael Penix, and they were like, oh crap, we might not get a quarterback to fall to us. And they scrambled and took that kid. The exec said he is a good player, but a luxury item. I don't like those kinds of picks unless you have everything else. And Raiders fans, we know that they do have everything else, and we're going to dispute everything that all of these naysayers are saying in tonight's video. But before we do, if you guys enjoy it, be sure to hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily Raiders content. Raiders fans, love you guys as always. You could try and get this video to 250 likes. That would mean the absolute world to me. So Adam Schefter, ESPN, he said on April 29th on the Pat McAfee show, this was just like a little less than a week ago, that there was a possibility the Raiders would have taken Penix if he didn't go to the Falcons. And I'm a big advocate for Michael Penix Jr. I had a feeling he was going to be selected at pick number 13. But guys, either way, the Raiders still walk away with an all-pro type of talent. Bowers was considered unanimously a top 10 overall talent. In 3 seasons at Georgia, Bowers caught a combined 175 passes for over 2,500 yards, 26 touchdowns. These are receiver numbers: 56 catches, 714 yards, and 6 touchdowns last season, even though he had surgery on his left ankle in October and then returned later in the season. His pass catching ability is going to perfectly complement Davante Adams, and receiver actually was a position of need in the Raiders draft room between offensive tackle and cornerback, and that's exactly what they did, and it's still getting critiqued. I was just reading a Bleacher Report article, and they were saying this: the idea of putting Bowers in an offense with Mayer, Davante Adams, and Jacoby Myers is very appealing, but it looks a little less fun when you remember Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew will be starting at quarterback. So here's the thing. When we go back to the first quote, it's like, I don't like these kind of picks unless you have everything else. And I think the Raiders do have everything else. I think their offensive line looks very good. You've got great tackles and Thayer Munford and Colton Miller. You've got Dylan Parham at left guard. You've got Andre James coming off an extension this upcoming season at the center position. And you picked up Cody Whitehair, who can play the right guard position. But I have a strong feeling that Jackson Powers-Johnson is going to win that. So Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, in my eyes, are perfectly fine quarterbacks. I don't need anything crazy, and it's because of what they just said. You're putting Bowers in an offensive system with Michael Mayer, Davante Adams, and Jacoby Myers. We're also going to talk about another running back they selected in this year's draft, another offensive weapon, but I just don't really buy into the whole they need other things. The Raiders had a top 10 defense, and that's if you're looking, depending on what statistic you look at, the Raiders were anywhere from 1 to 10 defensively once Antonio Pierce came into town. But new offensive coordinator Luke Getsy actually used 12 personnel, which features 1 running back, 2 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends at the 8th highest rate in the NFL last season when he was with the Chicago Bears last year. I'm from Chicago. I watch a decent amount of Bears games. We talked about this in our last video while I was saying Luke Getsy was not the problem in Chicago. It starts and ends with their ownership. I couldn't tell you. I could tell you Cole Kmet because I sat next to him in high school math and he went to my school, but I couldn't tell you who the Chicago Bears second tight end actually was last year. So Michael Mayer, Brock Bowers, I don't care who's throwing him the football because I know Aiden O'Connell, his 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in the final month of the season, and Gardner Minshew leading the Indianapolis Colts to a 9-8 record after, new pick Anthony Richardson got injured in week 4. So I feel perfectly fine actually about their offense, no matter who's throwing the football. And one big thing, or two big things, three big things actually. Jackson Powers Johnson, guard center out of Oregon, started games at both guard spots and center in his college career. He started 13 games at center last year. He was an All-American. He won the Ringmanton Award as the nation's top center. He provides quality versatility, which, as we saw with pick in the third round, number 77 overall, Delmar Glaze, offensive tackle out of Maryland, that the Raiders truly do value versatility on the offensive line. When we're talking about the offensive line in injuries and depth, it's more of a if not when they get injured, because you get banged up playing football, especially if you're in the trenches on the offensive side. Now, Delmar Glaze, he earned pass blocking grades from PFF in the mid-80s and only gave up 32 pressures on over 1,000 opportunities over his last 2 seasons. He does lack some foot speed and some quickness, which is why you don't want to leave that corner open on the edge. So that's why people are thinking he could move into the guard spot. But this is more of a long-term move because, once again, you drafted Jackson Powers Johnson, you got your tackle spot, you got your guard spots, or left guard spot. The left side's figured out, and he got your center. So Delmar Glaze, more versatility on the offensive line in the depth, and he's still got a bright future with the Raiders. Now, Dylan Laube, running back out of New Hampshire. This is probably the Raiders' best kept secret at the time of this recording. People are projecting him as a special teams guy because he averaged 31.1 yards on kick returns and 11.3 yards on punt returns. He actually also had a touchdown on each. But we saw these new rules with special teams, and everybody's just kind of saying, oh, well, they drafted him in the 6th round, and he's going to be used primarily in special teams. I completely disagree. He reminds me of a younger Christian McCaffrey, actually. Last season, 749 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns, averaged 4.7 yards per carry, and he also had 68 catches for 699 yards with 7 receiving touchdowns, including a game with 295 receiving yards against Central Michigan. And when we look at the running back room with the departure of Josh Jacobs, you still got guys, Zamir White, you picked up Alexander Mattison, but I think Dylan's got a very bright future with the Las Vegas Raiders, and I think it's going to start right away, and it's not only going to be on special teams. Let me know a win projection for the Las Vegas Raiders on paper at the time of this recording down below. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you